What up? What up? What up? It's your man Sean P coming in live. This is the Sean P Experience. Yes, all of my guests are unique and they're special and they're amazing, but some shows do stand out. This right here, my brother on the screen you looking at right now, is my favorite all-time living scholar. And I'll get more into that introduction in a little while, man. But how you doing, my brother?
Oh, brother Sean P., I am doing excellent, man. Everything is good. I've been looking forward to this ever since we talked about it. In fact, brother, going back to 12 years and we've been talking to each other, I've been waiting 12 years for this.
That's how I feel, brother. 12 years in the making, man. Let
Yes,
me
man.
start with some flowers and pay homage first before I get into my spiel. Um, when I saw Hidden Colors Part 1 all
Mm,
those years ago,
yeah.
until watching that DVD, you and your classmates of scholars, I had never heard anybody speak about our history the way y'all did in that show. And it sent me on a path I'm still on to this day
Mm,
because of you and your cast. That's why I went to college. That's
mm,
why I kept going to college and get multiple degrees. It's
mm.
why I'm doing the podcast right now. It's why I've written the books I've written. I wanted to just pay homage and give y'all salute, bow down, credit where it's due because people like yourself really did so much pivotal stuff in my life. I want to say it on camera while I can.
Wow. That's phenomenal. And brother, I really appreciate that. And that is the cornerstone to everything that I do. One of the greatest things as an educator, having taught in South Central Bronx for 31 years, having taught for 48 years, but in the Bronx, 31 years, taught college 12 years, taught every grade, every subject. One of the greatest compliments, there are people that are on Wall Street that they get bonuses, sometimes millions of dollars. But as an educator, with a drive, with a passion to teach, my bonus comes when one of my students come back to me and say, "You made a difference in my life." That is the greatest thing that anyone could ever tell me as an educator. That my being part of their life and talking to them about whether it be culture or just about life in itself, and to be able to be a part of an influence and inspiration, it is the highest that an educator, a teacher, could get. There is no money; it's priceless. So I appreciate, brother Sean P., you sharing this because it just lets me know that we're on the right track, that what we're doing, we're on the right track. And so thank you for that, brother. I
Yes,
appreciate it.
sir. Thank you. Thank you. So, of course, I have a formal introduction written for tonight, but our relationship goes so many years back. I said, you know what? I don't need a written out thing like as if I don't know you. So I'm gonna do it like this. For those that don't know, family, the brother on the screen, you probably seen him in Hidden Colors 1 through many. You probably seen him in Outer Darkness 1, and part 2 came out last month. It's incredible. Outer Darkness, Elementary Genocide 1, 2, and 3, and many, many other places where you find Black culture and knowledge. You seen his face, I heard his voice, I'm sure. My favorite scholar, Professor Kaba Kamene. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And I've, as we said earlier, man, we've been looking forward to this.
Yes, sir.
And,
Yes, sir.
it's a phenomenal time to have this type of conversation because of our experiences and what's going on.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to begin where I'd like to end. And I'd like to tell the community who is listening to your program, I just want them to know that we'll get through this. Things will get better. That's what we need to tell the children. Because a lot of times they're watching what's going on, they hear what's going on. We're very concerned about where we see things going. And having been around children for so long, sometimes we as adults speak in their presence and don't realize what actually is going on in their mind and how they're interpreting what's going on from a child's mind. We as adults, we know certain things. So we put everything together, we say things, but we don't realize that a child, as genius as they are, they have not had life's experiences enough to be able to put all of their experiences together and to know things. And so what becomes important is that we reinforce in our children, be they teenagers or younger, even college, that our history in this world as a melanated people, we've been through much worse than what we're going through now. Tell the children that and let them know our ancestors found a way out of that. And if our ancestors could find a way out of that, we can find a way out of this. Let them know that, because so many of the children may not be picking up the reality of what they face. And so it's going to get better.
Yes,
And
sir.
I'll tell you something else. This is a wake-up call for us. It's very important that we understand. We also have to understand Ma'at. Ma'at is a principle of life that is cosmic as well as earthly. Ma'at, M-A-A-T, is a female representation of the Kush Kemetic African people. And she represented truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, arrangement, and reciprocity. And of all of the characteristics of Ma'at, reciprocity is my favorite. What goes around comes around. You shall reap what you have sown. And it's important that we understand that Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, the wife of the great scholar, historian, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, we had developed a school for children back in the late 80s and early 90s. It was called the Institute for Youth. It's now called the John Henry Clark Institute for Youth. And we had Dr. Rosalind Jeffries come in and talk to us about all of the Neteru, or all of the representations, the hieroglyphs. Ma'at is represented by a feather. And she explained why a feather would be used to be the judge of truth and justice. And I liken it to democracy. You know, democracy, demokratia, means people power. Demokratia, what a democracy is, getting it from Africans, but in the Greek language, it was called demokratia, which means people power. And one of the things that I think we all need to fasten ourselves to as we're going through 2025, going into 2026 and planning for our future, is why would they use a feather to judge your heart at the judgment scene? They would put a feather on one side of the scale and your heart on the other. Why would they put a feather? You ever heard somebody say, my heart is light as a feather?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Or they may say, oh, I have a heavy heart if something happened that wasn't good. Well, that comes from Kush Kemetic people. And Kush Kemetic to me is Egyptian. That's what I mean when I say Kush Kemet, because Egyptian don't exist. That's a figment of today's imagination. Kush Kemetic African people took this feather, and to me it represents democracy. It represents governance, Ma'at, truth and justice, harmony. But why a feather? What's so special about a feather that would represent this phenomenal characteristic in life? Dr. Rosalind Jeffries told us that a feather is so light, and you hold it in your hand. Remember, that's democracy now. You got democracy in your hand. It's represented by a feather. If you hold it too tight for fear of losing it, you'll crush it. If you hold it too loose, the slightest wind can blow it out of your hand. So democracy, governance, and how you treat people, how you develop your civilization, you have to hold that ever so lightly, but ever so firmly. You don't crush it, and you don't let it fly out of your hand. But it's delicate. And if there's one thing that we're learning about what we're experiencing now in the world in 2025, how easy it is to lose your democracy, how it can blow out of your hand. And let's be clear, I am neither Democrat nor Republican. I'm independent. I'm not an independent. I don't belong to the independent party. I am independent. There's a difference. Because Democrats, as far as I'm concerned, is the left wing. The Republican is the right wing. But they're
Same
both
bird.
attached to the same bird,
Same
flying in the same direction, and that direction is away from us. It is important for us to understand what Malcolm told us. He said Democrats are sly foxes. Republicans are brute wolves. But don't ever forget they both belong to the dog family. So right now, where we are is a wake-up call. We must home grow our politicians. We must, in our community, raise up a generation of leaders, true leaders that follow Ma'at, truth, justice, harmony, balance, order and arrangement, understanding that what goes around comes around. You shall reap what you have sown. You shall get what you have given. And don't ever forget that. Because if you knew that how you conducted yourself with other people and nature, if you knew that, and if you knew that if you did something really good or something really not good, it would come back on you sevenfold. The question is, would you act like this if you knew that what you did to someone else was going to come back on you? If you did, then there's something mentally disturbed. But if you're balanced, harmonized, live in truth and justice, you wouldn't do some of the things that you do. Teach the children that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love to ask my scholars this question to lead the show off, but for you, I have a unique question. So I love to ask my guests. This show is called Sitting with the Griots podcast. And I love to ask my scholars how they feel about the moniker of being a griot. Does it feel weighty when I say that? But for you, my brother, you are part of a small pantheon of remaining scholars from a group of these master teachers. And as you said in the beginning of your book, so many have already passed and transitioned. Only a small group of y'all are left. How do you feel about being that one to carry that torch? You know, there's not many guys left around. How do you feel about that?
I was born ready, so I never had to get ready.
Oh, there it is. Stay ready.
You understand what I'm saying? My exposure to some of the greatest human beings to have lived on this planet, but specifically during this generation, has given me an opportunity to understand what a divine calling is. I don't see it as a weight. I don't see it as a sacrifice. Okay? I knew what I was getting into when I got into it. When I developed myself alongside of Dr. John Henry Clark, studying with him, he told me, if you're in here and doing this for the hand clap or for the money, get out now. And so I understood that the kitchen is hot. And if you know the kitchen is hot, if you ain't ready, you don't go in. Or if you're prepared, you go in. You make a choice. Because if you know something, you know, you can't complain. Like, for instance, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad used to always say that there are 1,000 wolves outside your door. You look out, you see all them wolves outside. There are 10 wolves out there that would put their life on the line to protect you. Okay? Did I say 100 or 1,000 wolves?
Said 1,000.
Okay. There are 10 out there that would protect you. But there's 990 that are waiting to tear you up. The problem is you don't know where those 10 that are going to protect you are. My question is, are you ready to go outside? And if you go outside unprepared, knowing you saw the wolves outside your door, you can't complain because you know the nature of the wolf. And so when I got into this, I did my exercise. I did my mental exercise. I did my intellectual exercise. I did my spiritual exercise. So I'm ready to carry anything that comes my way. And so my thing is, we do what we do because it do what it do. It do what it do.
Make it do what it do, baby. Yeah, yeah. So my next question is, you my favorite living scholar right now, but my all-time favorite is Dr. John Henry Clarke.
Yeah.
You had the unique pleasure of being under his tutelage at the foot of the master. My question is, how did that begin, that relationship? How did that start? And what did you gain most from being his student?
I was 12 and a half when I first met Dr. Clarke.
Wow.
Old heads, you know, older brothers and sisters used to bring some of us up to Harlem to do different things. And they brought us up one time, and Dr. Clarke was the speaker. I didn't know who he was. They were just bringing us up. And they sat us in front of him. There was about 5 of us, younger people. And he gave his presentation. Can't tell you what he said. I don't even remember what he was talking about. I'm, because I'm gonna tell the truth, because I think it's important to tell the truth, because I think that the power of the truth would be more powerful than if I lied. Because I could make up a story that he told. Nobody would know the difference. But the truth is important because he emblazoned a thought in my head as a 12-and-a-half-year-old. Ain't a teenager yet. This was the end of June. I would not turn 13 until November. So I was on my way to teenage years, but this was my first exposure to him. And everywhere I go, even to this day, with my own children, my own biological children, with the children that I've had in my classroom, with my college students, with my adults. Yesterday, I was doing a pre-Kwanzaa event, and I gave them this homework assignment, because I tell them I'm a teacher. I got to give everybody a homework assignment, because I don't want you to just leave here and not have something to do. And so what Dr. Clarke told us, the 5 of us, and everybody else, but the 5 of us, because he was concentrated on the young people that were there. He said, I want you to go home and I want you to look in the mirror. And I want you to tell the person that you're looking at, I love you, and mean it. Because if you can't do that, then there is nothing else anyone can do for you. That stuck in my head.
Man.
From 12 and a half. That stuck in my head. I would see him in Harlem here and there, wave to him. Never was, close. They didn't do anything at that point. But I remembered him. And I also had his phone number. He gave us his phone number. He was on 138th Street. And believe it or not, family, I was an altar boy. I grew up Roman Catholic. I was choir boy, altar boy. I spoke Latin better than the priest did. I wanted to be a priest. Okay? When you come up underneath that type of education, because I went to a Catholic school, I went to a Catholic high school. I went to the same high school that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went to. His name was Lou Alcindor at that time. The
Yeah.
Catholic school that I went to was on the same street that he would come down in order to go to his high school, Powell Memorial Academy. We young brothers and never saw nobody so tall before. Okay? And so when we would see Brother Alcindor come down the street, we would just gather around him, right? And he used to palm our heads like a basketball. He was very kind to us because I could imagine only what it was like to be that tall and to stand out like that. Not a negative, sometimes not even a positive, but I just remember. He was one of Dr. Clark's students also. He belonged to a book club
Yes,
that
sir.
interviewed Muhammad Ali. Dr. Clark was the one in charge of that writing program for children, for young people. Okay. And so I remember that, in fact, the priests that were serving Mass used to always ask for me to be their altar boy. Because if they ever forgot a part of the Latin Mass, I could always tell them how to say it. The Agnus Dei, Credo, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison. I was good I spoke Latin better than they did. And I had the accent too. When I was sophomore, I was 14. And I was a high school seminarian. And I was working in the basement of the church. And I came upon a book in the library downstairs. And it talked about a sect of priests that protected a statue from the Nazis in Poland. And the statue in the book was called Our Lady of Czeslakowa. But in parentheses, it said Black Madonna and Child.
Gotcha.
I had never heard that before. This was the first opportunity I called Dr. Clark. That's the first person came to my mind. I said, I got to figure this out. Because they had a picture of the statue. And she was Black. And so was Jesus. But I ain't seen none of that up in the church. I'm talking about a mind of a 14-year-old now. And how children think. And I remember my thoughts. And I remember I called Dr. Clark up. And this is really the first time I had ever called him. And he invited me to come up when I was free. He said, call me when you're free. Come on up and we'll talk. So I called him. And I went up. And he gave me a copy of a short story that he had written called The Boy Who Painted Christ Black. You can Google that story. Anybody listening right now, you can Google that story. And also, there was a cable television show where Blair Underwood played the part.
Okay.
They turned Dr. Clark's short story into a play on cable TV. The Boy Who Painted Christ Black. Check it out. Don't believe a word I say. And he gave it to me. And he gave it to me. Listen, check this out, Brother Sean P. This was mimeograph. Okay. Mimeograph was before Xerox. Mimeograph is when the ink is purple. Okay. There wasn't no Xerox machine. This was when you cranked it out like this and the whole thing turned out and it came out in purple ink. It's called mimeograph. And I got on the bus. I lived on 63rd Street. He lived 138th, I believe it was, 137th. It's now called John Henry Clark Place in Harlem. And so there was a distance between where I left and where I had to get off the bus. And I read that. I read it twice. It's a short story. I went home. I read it again. I read it a number of times. And I sat down. My mother was the Roman Catholic. My father belonged to the African Methodist Episcopal Church. AME Zion. Mother AME Zion. It's the same church that had land in Central Park. And I spoke to my mother first because I knew she was the one that would be most impacted by this. And then my mother said, look, we're not going to stop you, but are you sure? And I said, you know, Ma, I couldn't be more sure of anything in my life. My father from Tuskegee, he was a tailor, very good tailor. He used to make suits for me that made Gianni Versace cry. He was a very good tailor.
Wow.
And he worked in tailor shops to get extra money. And he said, well, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. So my mother took me to the store, and I bought like a little attaché case. Inexpensive, but attaché case. My father took my cassock and my surplice, the seminarian garb, the white surplice and the black cassock underneath that you wear in seminary, folded it up neatly, put it in the attaché case. Now, mind you, my supervising priest hadn't seen me in about 2 weeks. And when I came in, he said, Booker, which was my name before I corrected it, Booker, I think the church is losing you. And I said, Father, the church lost me. I put the attaché case on the table. They never saw me again.
Wow.
That's the impact Dr. Clark had on me at 14. Because when I went up to talk to him after I had read his piece, because I called him again, I went back up, he started dropping stuff on me about Catholicism, Christianity, Islam, Hebrewism, religions. And I said, Brother Sean P., I said, no, I can't be a part of this. I can't be a part of this. So when you ask me about my relationship with Dr. Clark and what manifest, and he and I got close after I got out of the military, because I was in the military during the Vietnam War. When I got out of the military, he was the one that recommended that I go into the military because he was in World War II. And when I came out of the military was when we really became closer. And I would say that would be post 1974, going into 1975. I was going to college at this time. And that is when he became more of someone that I related back to, asked him questions. I wasn't always around him. You know what I'm saying? Because I know that, and I could tell that he was so busy, I didn't want to make myself annoying, but I had a lot of questions that I was trying to figure out. But also, let me stick a pin here, Brother Sean P., because I want to take you back to when I was 7, 8, and 9 years old in that area. I grew up in a project that is down by Lincoln Center in New York now, 63rd Street, Amsterdam Avenue. I always say that my backyard was Hell's Kitchen, and my front yard was Harlem. We were right there between the two. 63rd Street and Amsterdam Avenue was right up from Hell's Kitchen and right below Harlem. So it was a very unique cultural place to be. And it was in the middle of what's called San Juan Hill, which was a very important place, right near Central Park. And so there was a lot of things going on at this time as I was looking at the world around me. And when I figured out what I was looking at, I said, there's something that's not happening here. Growing up in a project, I was there right when heroin started coming into the black neighborhoods. I remember the car that used to come up on Amsterdam Avenue. I could tell you what it looked like. It was a white car. And I remember who would go to the car to pick up the drugs. This was happening as a young person. And I'm seeing this, experiencing this. And as I got out of the military and he and I became closer, I began to realize and to build on certain things. And it's interesting in terms of what happens in life, and as your direction is transformed into who you become. And so Dr. Clark and my mother, Dr. Clark encouraged me to become a teacher, which was in the back of my mind. I really wasn't thinking about it. But my mother was the one that told me stay with the children. Because if you want to change the future, teach the children. And so that's when I started teaching in New York City. But when you think about the impact that Dr. Clark had on me, those are the different times in my life. And then from there it was just a matter of associating with him, going different places. There's not a class he taught that I wasn't there. There is really, well, locally anyway, there's not a place that had him. And because of the advantage of being around Dr. Clark, and you know, the other thing about Dr. Clark, I had been in his house when Chancellor Williams was there, when John G. Jackson was there, when Dr. Ben was there.
You know what
Dr.
I'm
Ben
saying?
used to call Dr. Clark Bubba.
That's the lineage. That's the Mount Rushmore right there, man.
Yeah, and there are pictures of the four of them together. I was there on certain occasions. There was some I was there with him and Dr. Ben. The one thing that Dr. Clark always appreciated about me is I never interrupted their conversations. I would be sorting out his files, putting things in place, because he would take something out and put it on the table. But the thing is that, you know, in order to keep a proper library, you got to put it back where you got it from. But he was too busy. So I did it. And so I'd be in the presence of these scholars talking, never opened my mouth, and just did my job. And that's what I believe Dr. Clark appreciated about me. I kept my place when I'm around scholars. And in the back of my mind, Brother Sean P., I also said, if I start talking, they're going to stop talking. And then I'm going to lose some information. I need to shut my mouth, just do my job. And so I was able to be in places with Dr. Clark where everybody wanted to be with Dr. Clark. So a lot of the Asa Hilliard, Naeem Akbar, Dr. Ben, I could go through the list of scholars, Shashi McIntyre. I can tell you the types of places I've been with these scholars and listening to what they're saying to each other. So from a very young age, I've been around these folk. And I know what it takes to do what you have to do. And what I attempt to do, even with our relationship, is just to impart on brothers and sisters, these great scholars, some of the finest minds in the world. I had the honor of listening to them talk. And it wasn't a presentation. It was these scholars talking to each other. I heard them talk about people. I heard them laughing about people. I could write a book just on certain things I heard them say about people that we really think are who they play to be, but they're really not.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So bring us to your brand new publication. Who were the Moors before the Moors?
That's it.
I want to know, how did you decide to explore the Moors before the Moors? Where did that idea originate from?
Well, I've always been interested in African history. I've always been interested in the origin of the world, the origin of the human family, trying to make sense of all of this. Could be because I'm Scorpio, and you know, Scorpio's always trying to figure out how things started. And I purposely titled it that because I used the term Moor for a specific reason. I could have called it Who Were the Negroes Before the Negroes. I could have called it Who Were the Blacks Before the Blacks.
Okay.
I could have called it Who Were the Africans Before the Africans. But I thought the term Moor was key. And in the book, I have an explanation of the etymological origins of the word more, which is the letter M and the letter R. Because the vowel that you use is not important. It's the consonants that's important. You could put an E in there. You could say mer. You could say mir. You could say mur, M-U-R. But people put the O, double O. Etymologically speaking, I explained what the M represents in Medu Neter or hieroglyphs. And I talk about what the R is. The M is an owl. The sound is an owl. The sound R is lips. I'm not going to get into the book because I want folk that are interested to get the book, because there's a deeper, we can't do everything we want in the time that we have this evening. There are 3 gifts that the human family was given that puts them as the masterpiece of the cosmic universe: knowledge, reasoning, and language. These are the 3 things that we have: knowledge, what you know; reasoning, that allows you to manipulate what you know to bring it to higher levels of consciousness; and language, that allows you to transmit this genius to other people. 3 gifts. The owl represents intelligence, knowledge, and reasoning. When I was growing up, we had Wise potato chips. And there was an owl on the bag. When people are graduating, a lot of times the owl represents graduation or knowledge and wisdom. There are commercials on TV even now that sells eyeglasses, and it's an owl that's selling the glasses. In other words, when you have glasses, you can see. And when you can see, you have intelligence. You see? And so the knowledge, the wisdom and understanding, the ability to reason what you know is represented by But the mouth represents the transmission of language. So more becomes a far more important word, etymologically speaking. We just don't say more. Black folk, even to this day, we here in the United States of America, in the Caribbean, and in Africa, the word is sacred. Rap is sacred. Even though we may hear words that we don't appreciate, and even though we don't understand, it's not the words that's important, it's the beats. That's a whole nother side story. But to be a more means you have wisdom, knowledge, understanding, the ability to reason, and the ability to transmit this knowledge through your mouth. More. So I used more because I could etymologically explain the importance of who these original human beings were, being the Twa Mbuti Khoisan people of Central and Southern Africa. First family that came out of Homo sapiens sapiens were Black people that lived in Central and Southern Africa. Bottom line, derogatorily called pygmies. Because when Europeans went over there, they called them my pigs. And people said, come on, like, can we find something else that we can say? That's too obviously disrespectful. So being arrogantly ignorant, what the Europeans did was they said, okay, so what we're going to do is that we're going to take the my and put it at the end. And we're going to change the I of pig to Y. And so instead of calling them my little pigs, we're going to call them pygmies. So that's where the word pygmy comes from. But if it wasn't for those short-statured African people, we would not be here today. Because it is out of them that got their show together and then took it on the road and peopled the planet. They first went across. First, they were in Central and Southern Africa, and for thousands of years. They developed themselves and they moved out. And in my book, I have the entire movement of these people, even to West Africa, East Africa, North Africa, South Africa. They peopled the planet. From there, they then moved into Saudi Arabia out of Ethiopia. On their way out, they became the Kush Kemetic people. Then the ones in North Africa went across and went into Europe through Spain, the same way that the Moors, but these Moors traveled thousands of years before 710 AD. See, because when we talk about the Moors, a lot of time we focus on from 711 AD to 1492. That's why I named my book, Who Were the Moors Before the Moors? Because there have been people who have slipped into Africa in the 600s, Indo-Europeans, who adapted to the African religion that was called the Way of Peace in an Arabic language that came out of Ethiopia. And they called it Islam, the Way of Peace. And the people that practiced this Way of Peace were called Musalem. And so they trickled into Africa in the 600s and they attacked Africans. And they peopled the northern part of Africa, but that part was already African. And they're getting credit for this. They're getting credit for Timbuktu. Timbuktu was a university before Indo-Europeans existed. And there are ways that you know through evidence of this. And again, I put it in the book because family, when my thing is, my brother Sean P., don't believe a word I say. As an educator, my job is not for you to believe me. As an educator, I think the greatest contribution I could give to a student or to a learner is to make you think. And if I can make you think, then you can take it upon yourself to do what you want to do with that information. And so the idea of the who were the Moors before the Moors, I take you to, and you see, what we miss is very important because in the ancient documents, these Africans were called Pelasgians. 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 These Pelasgians were the ones that were in the Mediterranean basin. 30 countries in the Mediterranean. Greece. There was an entire section of black people in a place called Etruria, where the capital of Etruria was called Rome. Today we call it Italy, and the capital is called Rome. Sardinia, Corsica, the islands of the Mediterranean. Minoa, Crete, okay, in the Mediterranean. These were all black people for thousands of years. These were the Moors before the Moors. And so that's why when I wrote the book, what I was attempting to do was to break down the barriers that we have. Because I noticed on my Instagram and emails and places where people, Facebook, thing like that, people say, I'm not black, I'm a Moor. I hear people say, I'm not a Moor, I'm African. People say, I'm not African, I'm African American. People say, I'm black. Black ain't a color, so I'm a Moor. What I'm saying is, if we're still arguing about what we're going to call ourselves, how are we going to solve our issue? If we can't get past that. So I don't care if you're a Moor. If you want to be called a Moor, I call you Moor. If you're a Negro, if you're a nigger, I'm not going to get into this argument about what you want to call yourself. There's a piece in the book where I talk about the origins of the N-word.
Yes, you did. A very good layout. Very good layout.
Okay, Brother Pianki wrote an article. And I took that article and I used it within the context of understanding these terms. Ethiopia isn't even a Greek term. I've got a section in the book where I'm talking about where the word Ethiopia comes from, and that comes from Africans. Greeks adopted what the Africans were telling them, names that they call themselves. Ethiopia. That came from Africa. They didn't come from Greece. We say Ethiopian means burnt. Ethiopian means people of burnt face, and Ethiopia is the land of the burnt face. Well, that's what the Greeks did, but the word itself came from Africans. And so the Moors before the Moors, I take you into America, because I know there's a lot of conversation about America. There's a book, R.A. Umar S. Bey gave me a book in Toronto. I got a book by him in Toronto called Pyramids in America, where this brother locates all the pyramids in this hemisphere. And what I do, and not only did he locate the pyramids, he actually gave you directions as to, if you're in that state, how you could go there.
Yes. I love in the appendix in the book, you break down every state, what the mounds are and things like that. Every state. I love that in the back of the book.
Yes. And what I tell people to understand is I use the work of the scholars as evidence, because I want you to get that book. Because in that book, he has a lot more information on the pyramids than what I gave. I only gave a little bit because I didn't want to rewrite his book. And, I don't want to get in the middle of this brother's genius. There's another brother, Nasser Nehe Ali, that wrote a book called The Paleo-Americans, that talks about the original Black people in America. It compensates and it complements the book written by a good brother friend of mine, Dr. David Imhotep.
Yes, Dr. Hotep, man. I had no idea he passed until I read the front of your book. I didn't even know he passed, man. I felt so bad when I read it.
Yeah. He and I had many conversations. And you know what I got from Dr. Imhotep, which was and I used to always tell the brother, he always enjoyed me telling, because he really respected my work. And when two scholars get together and we respect each other, the respect is deeper, because I really respected him, because I had his first book, his first printing of the book. And I appreciated his investigative abilities. He was like an investigator. And the first 66% of his book was about Africans in America that he could prove. The other third of the book was what he believed to be true, but still had work to do in proving it. I appreciated that.
Brother Kaba.
I remember one time I was talking to brother, and Dr. Imhotep, Dr. David, told me, he said, everybody talks about truth and they talk about facts. But he said, always keep in mind that truth and facts can change. What you want is evidence. Evidence never changes. And he gave me the example of the fact that he said yesterday, because he lived in Virginia. He said yesterday it was a very rainy day. Very cloudy, very rainy. He said today is a beautiful sunny day. Yesterday it would have been a fact that it was raining and it would have been cloudy. But today that fact and that truth is not anymore. So the truth and the fact changed. It's the evidence that you want. And as African scholars, as African historians, as African people who are trying to dig into the truth, what Dr. David Imhotep taught me was, I'm about evidence. Put your evidence on the table. Okay, present to me your evidence. And so when R.A. Umar S. Bey, the evidence is the pyramids. I did a ceremony on top of Monk's Mound in 2015 for the autumnal equinox. I was on top of that mound. I was on top of that pyramid. And we brought folk from Illinois, all over, Missouri, because Monk's Mound is right there. In fact, you can see the St. Louis Arch from on top of the mound. That's how close Missouri is to this part of southern Illinois. It's called Collinsville now, but the indigenous people called it Cahokia. There was a brother in the museum. They have a museum at this site that we had gone to. There was a brother that told me, he said, look, I follow your work, so I know why you're here. He said, let me tell you something. There's evidence that the people that built this were black, but they took it out. It's hidden. And the reason why it's called Monk's Mound is because Trappist French, Trappists, monks, that's the sect of the monk, Trappist, Trappist. Trappist monks took the stones from that pyramid to build their monastery.
Wow. I have never heard that before.
He said there's evidence that these were black people did this, but you're never going to find it. In the book, I go into various aspects of who the Moors were, and I honor three very important Moors I consider Moors. And one of them, of course, is the Honorable Noble Drew Ali.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The founder of the Moorish Science Temple. The second is a sister by the name of Sister Clara Muhammad, the wife of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I tell some stories about her. And the third one is somebody that we all should be aware of. His name for us was Minister Clarence 13X.
5% nation. 5%.
God's on earth.
Yes,
I
sir.
used to see him in Harlem. I never spoke to him. Can't say I shook his hand. But I found it interesting that every time he passed black people, he'd say, yo, God, what's up? I was trying to figure out, God? You calling each other God? You know, Wu-Tang invited me to be a part of their album. The Saga Continues.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's number 17 on the album. It's the next to last piece on the album, The Saga Continues. It's called Message. Wu-Tang, many of the Wu-Tang members are members of the 5% Nation. Jay-Z is part of the 5% Nation. And so I felt that when you look at the Moors and you understand what they were developing, I wanted to give you examples of Moors. I just didn't want to tell you about the Moors. I wanted to give you examples of Moors, both male and female. Sister Clara Muhammad ran the Nation of Islam for 11 years, between 1935 and 1946, when Elijah Muhammad was either on the run for his life or was in prison during World War II. She ran the nation. But she knew that at that time, women would never be seen as a proper leader. So she always made the Honorable Elijah Muhammad seem to be the leader. But she was running the daily events. Now, there are people that will challenge that. You got to show me your evidence. And don't make it emotional. I'm not into emotion. I'm into science. Show me your evidence. And so, who were the Moors before the Moors was meant to be is the fifth and final book in my series. My first book was William Leo Hansberry.
I love that book.
William Leo Hansberry.
I love that book.
okay, the architect of the Black Studies program in America. My second book was Spirituality Before Religions. My third book was Shabaka Stone. My fourth book was Carbon Before Melanin. And my fifth and final book was Who Were the Moors Before the Moors? And these were meant to develop an understanding of the content material that I believe as African people we must get into. We must understand. I tell people I'm not a writer of books. I write curriculum. I don't write books. But I wrote those books because I had something to say. So between the years 2014 and just recently this year, 2025 in March, I published Who Were the Moors Before the Moors? That was my odyssey for our community. Who were the Moors before the Moors? You know, let's put aside all this nonsense. Let us also understand that the word Olympics, where that came from. Olympics comes
Speak
from
on that. Speak
Nigeria.
on that.
Yeah, it comes from the Yoruba people. Olu. Olu is a word that represents mountain. See, we get, and this is something that Dr. Clark used to always say, we always get caught up in Egypt. Very exotic. But all of Africa was great. We don't realize that there were great things going on. When the pyramids were being built in Egypt, there were great things going on in Nigeria. Nok culture, Eredo. Great things happening in Central Africa. Stone monuments being built in Southern Africa. So I always say, let's not get caught up just in East Africa. Great, did great things, but it's not the only place that great things happen. And so I think it's important that as we move forward that we understand, you know, how we can get to that point. Olu means mountain. It gives the impression of being a mountain. Olu. That's where Mount Olympus came from. The word Olympics itself comes from West Africa. The practice of the competition, because, see, sports came from military training. When you stop and think about it, when you look at the Olympics, it's all military. You got the javelin, which is the spear. You've got the discus and the shot put, which is rocks that we used to throw at each other. You have racing, swimming, boxing,
wrestling, grappling. Yep.
Okay. All of those are military sports. And so in preparation of the younger warriors, and you're being involved in martial arts, you understand that in preparing young people in martial arts and in the act of defense, what they did is they transferred it from a military science into a sports science. And then they competed with each other. And then other nations began to compete with each other. In Africa, only Africans. In Kemet, in Kush Kemet, it was called the Sed Festival. And it started when the Pharaoh, or the Neset Biti, we call him Neset Biti, the Pharaoh had to prove that he was mentally, physically, and spiritually prepared to lead the nation. They weren't going to let nobody with mental issue.
So, Brother Kaba,
yeah.
Is this the Black Panther the combat scene in Black Panther, and he's fighting to be the Black Panther?
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. To prove you're worthy of the throne, which is female, by the way. The throne is female. She is the one that's going to choose who's going to sit on the throne. Aset, the symbol of Aset, determination, royalty. On her head is a throne. Okay, one thing we don't realize about how we chose our leaders, it was a man that led, but it was a woman who chose who would lead. And now you ask yourself, well, why would that be? Well, the common sense says that who better to know who the leader was than the hands that rocked the cradle? Who better to know who was the better equipped to lead the nation than the mothers and the grandmothers and the aunts of the community that watched the young children grow up? It's called laying on of the hands. That's where the British get that thing where they put the sword on you to make you a. It's us, brother. That's what
But
Moors before the Moors were meant to be. So I encourage our community. You can
yes,
go to
sir.
my website. Right now, I have it up on Amazon. I haven't put it on my distribution. There are other ways that you can get it to me, that you could get it from me. But right now, Amazon, particularly if you're outside of the country, the best way of getting it is to, there it is right there. Yeah. Who were the Moors before the Moors? And the subtitle is Mi Amor, which means my love. Mi Amor.
Yes, sir. Before you leave, I had a question for you. I went to the African American Museum in New Orleans yesterday, and there was this big mural on the wall, and it was saying how in New Orleans, some folks think that it's cursed because of all the hurricanes and things that happened in New Orleans. But it also said that New Orleans is actually on the 30th parallel to ancient Kemet in the Valley of the Kings. I want you to break some of that down for the family, if possible.
Well, the important thing to understand about the geological area of New Orleans is black folk never lived there, because New Orleans is like a bowl. The indigenous people called Huricao, which is where the word hurricane comes from. And they recognize that there's a way that at a time, and every hurricane starts on the coast of West Africa. It's the
Yes,
middle
sir.
belt. It's the
Marcus
middle belt.
Garvey.
Okay. And when it leaves the west coast of Africa, it comes down and across what used to be the Ethiopian Ocean, and it's the Atlantic Ocean, I should say. And the Ethiopian meant African, but most of the waters were called Ethiopian, even the Pacific. But be that as it may, when the hurricane comes in, if it travels and it's heading more towards a northern area, it'll hit the eastern coast of Florida. Okay. But sometimes the hurricane coming down on that belt will go around Florida through the Caribbean, and it will attach itself to the river. Okay. And when it hits that river right there in New Orleans, the Mississippi, the thing about a hurricane is that as it travels in the water, it gains strength. The hotter the water, the greater the strength. And even though hurricane season starts in June 2nd, and it goes until December 2nd, the reason why October, sometimes end of August, October into November, is the worst hurricanes is because that's when the water has heated up enough over the summer. When that hurricane, if that wind comes around and it comes up and it gets into New Orleans, it rides the river straight up. And that's why most of the mounds are built away from the Mississippi River, but along the Mississippi River, because the Mississippi River was transport. The Mississippi River was to the indigenous people of America what the Hapi or the Nile River was to Africa. It was a major thoroughfare of trade. And that is why when you get to a certain point of the Mississippi, it splits into the Ohio River, and then the Mississippi River continues. But in that Y, right there is where Cahokia or Collinsville, Illinois is. And it has been shown that Cahokia, or where the Y of that Mississippi River is evidence of every indigenous people from Alaska to Tierra del Fuego in Southern America. There's evidence of artifacts, coins, foods, language, the Siouan language, the Muskegon language, the Iroquoian language of the indigenous people, all based in an African dialect. That's why so many indigenous words sound so African when you hear them spoken. When you hear an indigenous person speak, that is why the eagle is so important to the indigenous people, because it is the falcon of Heru, the family relation. The owl is so important. The clans, the totems, are the Neteru. You belong to the bear clan. You belong to the owl clan. You belong to the bear clan. Okay? Those are the Neteru of America. And you belong to that clan just like you belong to the shrine of Ptah, the shrine of Asar, the shrine of Ma'at. Same concept. That's why they braid their hair. That's why they have feathers in their head. It's all an adaptation of African tradition. And so the reason why it's cursed is not because it's cursed, but because of the hurricane that comes through. And it was because New Orleans is like a bowl. It goes under. So anything that comes in is going to come in and it's going to flood New Orleans. And that's what Katrina was. It was a flood. Imagine having something straight and then here you have a bowl that's here. Well, as it comes to you, it's going to sink in that hole or that bowl, and then it's going to perk up because it's going to gather the water, and then it's going to continue north through the hurricane winds. Huricao. And so that's what I think. That's my own personal thought. Nobody was supposed to live there, but the French did, because the French ain't got no sense. It's beautiful land. It's a beautiful place.
Yes, rich culture.
Absolutely, but it's so dangerous.
It is.
If the hurricane comes through,
and
it goes around the coast of Florida and heads towards the Mississippi River. Right there, New Orleans is sitting there as a bowl, ready to receive those hurricane winds and rains.
Yes, sir. Before we leave, I want to ask you about your son, Heru, right?
Yes.
So I love over the years watching what you're doing together, making these documentaries, making your Quibinars, making other content you're making with the videos and everything. I love what he's doing for your legacy. We said our elders earlier, unfortunately, they wasn't all being able to get caught on film. They wasn't all able to be captured in the streaming era. So give me how you feel about your son carrying that torch for you and the way in which he's doing it. How does that feel for you?
Feels phenomenal, for one thing. But another thing is I'm following African tradition, original tradition. Because when you look at every great dynasty level, every great series, the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and the Napatan or the 25th dynasty, what you see is that the elder never started new dynasties. The elder, for instance, you have Ka. Ka was in the line, and two pharaohs of Napatan, of Kushite area. They were the family, the father, grandfather, uncles of Narmer or Menefer. So while the elders ended one dynasty, they bequeathed to the younger who inherited to start the new dynasty. When you get into the Middle Kingdom and the revitalization of the African tradition after the onslaught of the Haibri, the invader, after the Sixth Dynasty. You have Mentuhotep and the Intefs who end that dynasty and allow their children to start the Middle Kingdom. When you get into the New Kingdom, you have Sennacherib Tao and Seqenenre Tao lead the way for Akmose to start the New Kingdom. When you get into the Napatan Kingdom, or the kingdom of the 25th dynasty, you have Alara and Kashta, their brothers. They are pushing the invaders out. But it is Pianki that starts that dynasty, the son of that lineage. So when you ask me about Heru and me, my job is not to start anything. My job is to end this and let his generation start the new way. My job is to make it possible, So when you ask me about the work that my son Heru and I are doing, what I am doing is I am bequeathing to him historically, as we have always done to our children, the future. I am here to support him. I'm not here to start the new way. I'm here to end the old way so that the younger generation can start the new way. That's how I see it. Science, evidence. This is our history. We, this generation, my generation, I'm at a point, I ain't looking to start nothing new. But I want to lay the groundwork for the new generation, the young generation. That's why I was into teaching. That's why I'm into teaching. Because I want to give to you, Brother Sean P., the future. I want to give to Heru the future. I want to give to young people. This is your time. I had my time. And I did the best I could with what I had. John Henry Clark did the best he could with what he had. Sheikh Anta Diop, Theophilus Obenga, Shashi McIntyre, Asa Hilliard. They did the best they could with what they had. William Leo Hansberry, he did the best he could with what he had. He charted a whole new way. That's why I opened up my entire book series with him, An Intellectual Libation. If we're into African history, we're into African History Month. He worked with Carter G. Woodson in the establishment of Negro History Week. It was his curriculum that was used to take it to that level. He was tapped by Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey wanted him to be a part of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. He wanted him to be in charge of the educational system. This is who he was. He did the best he could with what he had. He developed maps, because I was in his house. I did research in his house. He drew maps that never existed about Ethiopia. He did things that never existed. Nobody was looking at Ethiopia like he was. He was able to do the best he could with what he had. The next generation did the best they could with what they had. Dr. Clark was a student of William Leo Hansberry. He brought him to New York to teach at the New School for Social Research. And every Friday, he would leave D.C. and come to New York. And sometimes he'd spend a night with Dr. Clark and then go back to D.C. So, the idea that I tell the young people, this is your time. But I'm here to support you. And I want you to know things are going to get better. And you're going to make them better. And I have good news, and I have not so good news. The good news is that Dr. King was right. We are going to get to the promised land. The not so good news is if some of us don't change our ways, you ain't going to make it. Money has its place.
That's real.
I'm just being honest. I'm trying to be as honest as I can from my perception of what I see. Some of us are chasing dreams that will never be fulfilled. Some of us want to be people that we were never born to be. Some of us are looking for love in all the wrong places. And the first thing you must do to succeed in life is what Dr. Clark told us that day that I met him when I was 12 and a half. Look in the mirror and tell that person that you're looking at, I love you, and mean it. Love the pigmentation in your skin. Love the width of your nose. Love the shape of your lips. Love every kink and nap in your hair. Love yourself. And if you need improvement, don't look in the mirror and say, I hate how I look, or I hate this. Love how you look, but know you can do better. And you make the change because you love yourself, not because you hate yourself. Our young people. And if I could tell young people another thing, I want to tell you what the most precious thing you have is. You can have all the money in the world, Brother Sean P., and you can lose it. You can make more money the next day. You can have 8 houses. They all burn down. You can build another house starting the next day. But you'll never have another December 20th, 2025. The most precious thing you have is time and how you use it. That's why we say pay attention, because your attention is a currency, and how you spend it determines who you are. Time. Don't waste it. Procrastination is the thief of time. When you put off today, when you put off for tomorrow what you should do today, say, no, I'm going to do it today. In fact, not only am I going to do it today, I'm going to do it right now. Time is the most precious thing you have. Don't waste it. You can't get it back. You can't get it back. One of the saddest things as we move into our maturity level, as I've grown over the years and I've accumulated my years in place on this earth, one of the things I've come to realize is that one of, if not the saddest things that I've experienced from just being with people is to come upon an elder or a senior person, an older person, and they wish they had done something else. And what's worse than that is when you've been given opportunities and you let them slip out of your hands, when you wasted your time, when you procrastinated and put off, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. No. Because when you become an elder and you look back, particularly if you've been given opportunities and you didn't take advantage of them, two of the saddest words in the English language. Every language has what I'm about to say. But in English, the saddest thing that you can say, too late. Too late.
Yes.
Too late. Love yourself. Respect yourself. Forgive yourself of your transgressions. Because, Brother Sean P., I got history. I wasn't born like this. I became this. I went through my trials and tribulations growing up in a project. I was exposed to everything that everybody else was exposed to. But by the grace of the Creator and the intercession of our ancestors, people came into my life. First, I was born to a phenomenal couple, my mother and father. That's my first blessing. I had a phenomenal sister, older than me. She was my protector. So I've had good opportunities. But those things didn't take money. It just took love and respect. And I came from a family that respected. And I've been around enough children in my lifetime to notice that many of our children live in very rough and harsh ways. I know that. But I used to always tell them, there's nothing you can do with what you were born into. But there is something you can do about your life right now. To the young brothers, you may have grown up without a daddy at home, wishing he was there. But with everything that you wish that he was there, be there for yours. Don't continue the cycle. Break the cycle. And as Black people, we have gone through some of the harshest times that a human being can go through. And our ancestors on the plantation knew that they might not be free. They knew that they might not become free. But the one thing that they did know, Brother Sean P., they knew that if they just kept on keeping on, somebody would be free. And when they did that, they manifested us. They brought us into existence. And so my question to us is, what are you manifesting? What do you want in the future? Where do you see our people in 100 years? Where do you see them in 2125? And what are you doing to be part of the process to get us there? Our ancestors facing all, they didn't commit suicide. They had mental issues, pain, hurt, struggle, mentally, physically, spiritually, soulfully. They had that. But something inside of them made them realize if they just kept on keeping on, things would be different. And that's what makes me wake up every morning. To keep on keeping on. I may never see the school that I imagine for our children and our people. But I know for a fact that if I just keep on keeping on, somebody down the road, maybe in 50 years, 60 years, will build that school. That's the faith that allows me to do what I do. Like our ancestors. William Leo Hansberry never realized that his life, you should have seen what he went through to do what he did. Even some of us attacked him. But he kept on keeping on. Died in 1965 at the age of 71 from a cerebral hemorrhage. He was thinking so hard, his brain exploded. He never knew that there would be a young brother years later named Kaba Hiawatha that would write a book about him. He didn't do it hoping somebody would. He did it because his divine destiny was to do what he did. Everything I do, I don't do for the hand clap or for the money. One day, there will be people that never saw me, didn't know me, but they're going to come upon this interview on the internet with my brother Sean P. And they're going to say, they was doing something back then. The question is, what are we doing? Are we just talking? Or are we going to do something? Our ancestors did. With the little they had, they did. And if they could do that back then, I certainly can do this now. And so I end as I begin. I thank you, Brother Sean P., for all that you do, for all the years of our conversations, and for all the encouragement and inspiration that you've given me, and all the things that I've seen you do, from all the different books and things that you've done to develop an understanding for our people, and then to give me the privilege to be able to be on this show and for the first time be able to see you and talk to you, and to have this type of fellowship for our people. And one day, 100, 150 years from now, people will see us like we've seen people in the past and what they've done. And they'll realize, as we realize we're here because of them, they'll realize that they're there because of us. No hand clap, no money, because we ain't gonna be around. I'd like to Methuselize this. I'd like to live to be 200. I don't think quite that will happen. But I'm not doing it for that. We have work to do. And I want to be part of that group that may be in the promised land spiritually. But I don't want to be a part that looks back and says, I wish I had done something else. Too late.
Right. Right.
So thank you for this opportunity.
Man,
brother.
thank you very, very much for coming on the platform. You got so many books you've written. I would definitely try to invite you back on again.
Yes.
2026, man, bring you back and discuss some more, man. Thanks for the family for coming out, watching this later on. And tomorrow night, my last episode for the year, we're closing out 2025. So tomorrow night, I will see you all again. Thank y'all very much. Good night.
Peace.
All right, my brother, the live stream is in.